Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final Seeker session of 2023. I hope that you're doing well and having a good weekend. And let's say hi to Jay Copley. How are you, Jay?
Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Welcome.
Mark, you muted your line just so you're aware.
I really did. Let me start over. Thanks, Jay. I was just talking to myself and saying that 2023 has been a turbulent year for all of us. There have been wonderful parts as well as horrendous parts, parts that beggar belief and really beg the question, what does spiritual life mean in a world where there is so much conflict, so much turmoil, so much unrest? So this month, we're going to be looking specifically to close the year out at this question of enlightenment, what it is and what it isn't. Now, enlightenment can be said to be the purpose of spiritual life, regardless of the particular path that you're on. The destination, the goal of freeing oneself of the lies of the mind and waking up to reality as it is in the present moment. The enlightenment that we're talking about is lowercase e. Enlightenment as an ordinary experience that's available to us at all times when we pay attention. My friend Sharon Salzberg, the meditation teacher, likes to say that when we're sitting in meditation and we realize that our mind is wandering, that is a moment of enlightenment. When the unconscious becomes conscious and you become aware of being aware. Every time you become aware of being aware, you're experiencing a moment of enlightenment. These mini awakenings are like gems. The light of awareness shines through them. Our practice is to string these moments of illumination together so that our lives become more luminous, more awakened. Awareness comes to shine through experience, and the witness perspective starts to come into view. Witnessing our own experience makes it translucent. We begin to see through our own fictions to the outlines of what is actually true. We're no longer completely entranced by our hallucinations, the stories that we tell ourselves about our lives that aren't the truth and often lead to suffering. Consider a moment in your own life when a lie of your mind became obvious to you, an aha moment of recognition that woke you up from the trance that you were in. In that moment of seeing through your own delusion or hearing through it, because often we're babbling lies to ourselves and we sometimes hear through our own cacophony in our own mind. In that moment of seeing through or hearing through our own delusions, we are changed. Our relationship to experience changes. We're in the world, but we're not completely of the world. We come to inhabit the witness, which is that faculty of the mind that watches us, but isn't fooled by us because it is free and it is always awake. It doesn't matter how a person reaches this place, whether it's through meditation or through writing, yoga, prayer, self-inquiry, dialogue with a therapist or with friends. When you step into this witness awareness, you finally are able to embody your best self, to give the most you have to offer, to enjoy yourself fully with others as well as alone, to stop suffering from self-hating stories, and to finally be able to savor every moment of your precious life, even when things are going badly. And this is an essential point. It is possible to experience lucid joy, the wider, deeper view of the witness, in moments when you and others are in pain. These two experiences are not mutually exclusive. If they were, then enlightenment wouldn't mean anything, would have no value, because we're always subject to pain in the human body. We come to see that there is, in fact, a third position in human life beyond good and bad, beyond comfort and suffering, which is spiritual liberation. In that third position, there's enough space for whatever happens without losing grace or unconditional gratitude. But what can it possibly mean to talk about unconditional gratitude in a world of so much horror and conspicuous suffering? How is it possible to see children dying in Gaza or Ukraine and feel thankful to be alive? How can we hold such vast opposites in our hearts? the terrible video images, as well as for me, looking out my window and seeing the two deer in my backyard, eating from the bird feeder. Life is beautiful and terrible. Both are true. To be human is to be vast, to contain multitudes, as Walt Whitman said. And that is exactly as it should be. We're shattered by life. That's our mission here on Earth in a human body. Though our egos may be shaking their fists at the sky and asking, who signed me up for this assignment? The truth, as Stanley Kunis says, is that the heart breaks and breaks and lives by breaking. The holiest people among us are the most utterly heartbroken. The saints and the mystics bleed with compassion. Heartbreak, you could say, is one of the entrance fees to enlightenment, being broken by the knowledge of just how agonizing life is for so many people, how much people suffer, how many children are orphaned, and homes are destroyed, and the worst of the worst comes to pass. All of this is a given. The enlightened view, the witness awareness, accepts the terms of this world and says, Amen. Says yes, even in the face of the terrible. Now, this sounds completely perverse to the rational mind. Why should I say Amen to Hamas or COVID-19 or mass shootings? The reason is that we stand to be awakened by the terrible, to be shaken from our complacencies, to be pulled from our silos of denial and forced into a confrontation with reality. That is the value of suffering. As Matthew Fox, the Christian theologian, put it, we live in a beautiful world, not a pretty one. That's an essential point to understand. No matter how terrible the world becomes, this all belongs to the exterior life, the life of changing circumstances. It doesn't touch the life of the soul. The soul isn't rocked by headlines. The soul knows that the wheel will spin, that today's horror will become tomorrow's invention, that today's loss will lead to a breakthrough that was only prompted by necessity. The interior life, the soul life that is always present and doesn't change, is the foundation of our awareness as seekers. When we forget the soul and live only from the body-mind, we're like a bird with one of its wings torn off. We can't find balance in the storm. Remembering the soul requires practice, however. It requires quiet and listening, exploration, grieving, emptying, letting go, and stepping free from the clutching ego that believes it is dying and under threat. This means claiming your power as an enlightened awareness that isn't trapped in its circumstances. Remembering the inherent freedom of the witness and your own illuminated being is the doorway to a whole new way of life. Emerson said, know yourself a man and be a god. Elsewhere, he writes that a man is a god in ruins, and both are true. We are both divine and broken. Both are true. Emerson compares how we live to being like a temple in ruins. The temple may be in ruins. It may have lots of broken windows and peeling paint, but the foundation is still there. That foundation is the essence of our being. Underneath the rubble of our self-absorption, our fear, our delusion, is an ever-present, inexhaustible awareness that shines through the shards of the shattered ego. And that's what you and I are doing here together in the Seekers Forum. We're here to remind one another of this God within us, this Buddha nature, whose luminosity is so often shrouded by the horrible goings-on in the world. As you approach the start of the new year, it's a good time to kindle this luminosity and ask yourself where you are on your spiritual journey. How much time a day do you devote to kindling the soul inside you? How much attention do you pay to your personal process of awakening? This attention may involve formal practice or simply being aware of being aware. When you're hating somebody or you're having a fight or you're feeling fear or jealousy or ambition. Where is your soul in all of this? That's what we need to ask ourselves. What has happened to the part of you that isn't hurt by the exterior life and knows itself to be the awareness that doesn't change while everything around it falls apart? Cultivating self-awareness throughout the day is the most direct path to enlightened living. In fact, your life is the only path you need. If you're paying sufficient attention, if you're cultivating witness awareness, if you're learning from your mistakes and questioning your responses, you cannot not be enlightened. Each lie you see through, each lie of the mind, is like clearing a branch between your eyes and the sun. Emerson recommended one well-spent hour a day, when the soul is allowed to be in the foreground, when time is allowed to pause and we pull away from the exterior life to meet ourselves in the inner world. If we don't do that, if we don't practice, then the branches and the tangles and the refuse stay where they are, and we remain in the dark, with our true nature shadowed from ourselves and others. In my own experience, it really is the commitment to cultivating witness awareness that matters, remembering to be aware of being aware, more than any strict orthodoxy or moralizing or measuring oneself by the yardstick of some belief system or another. That doesn't mean we can't use tools, practices, traditions can be extremely useful, as long as we don't confuse the tool with the practice, which requires nothing but self-remembering. Too many people grow over-attached to the tools of their tradition, to dogma, rules, prohibitions, and pay very little attention to the intention behind what they're doing, which doesn't happen in a church or a temple, but in moment-to-moment, mundane experience. Those instants when you step out of the mind, when you feel it going crazy, when you feel yourself slipping into delusion. Those times when you remember to remember, when you reclaim contact with the soul. Now, the reason that practice matters so much is that our default mode, as everybody knows, is to forget. Our default mode is to lose ourselves in thinking and feeling. It's just like being drugged and then needing to rouse ourselves from some kind of primordial lethargy. Emerson has a wonderful image for explaining this drowsiness and how it paralyzes us. He uses the mythic idea that when we're born, we're given a cup of an elixir to drink that causes us to forget our origins. This is an old story, an old myth that runs across many different traditions in different terminology. As we come into this world, we're handed this cup of elixir by a guard that the ancients called genius. This is how Emerson puts it, quote, "We wake and find ourselves on a stair. There are stairs below us, which we seem to have ascended. There are stairs above us, many a one, which go upward and out of sight. But the genius that stands at the door by which we enter and gives us the cup to drink mixed the cup too strongly, and we cannot shake off the lethargy. Sleep lingers all our lifetime about our eyes, as night hovers all day in the boughs of the fir tree. All things swim and glitter. Our life is not so much threatened as our perception. Ghost-like, we glide through nature and should not know our place again," unquote. Isn't that beautiful? The truth is that until we discover a spiritual path, we stumble through our lives in a daze of self-forgetting and delusion. This daze increases or decreases depending on how much energy we devote to paying attention, to enlightening ourselves. The power to do so actually increases throughout our lifetimes. In fact, it's the only thing about us that gets stronger potentially as we age. This is a profound truth. Ram Dass reminded me once that wisdom alone remains, that while everything else falls away, the power of enlightenment is undimmed and unchanging. Being with Ram Dass was proof of that. There he sat while we worked on a book together, his arms strapped to a wheelchair, unable to feed himself, to walk, to speak clearly. But this witness inside him was glowing and clear. Eventually, he would get out the sentence that he was struggling to speak, and it would be luminous. It would be like one of the gems that I was just describing, in which awareness, the awareness of being, makes experience translucent. Ram Dass was as translucent as ever, trapped in this suffering body. The stroke he had deprived him of nearly everything else but his witness, which would remain strong and curious and willing. But it's because he'd spent the past 50 years practicing doing service, cultivating his awareness of this godly nature, that it was there for him when he needed it. He was extremely flawed and completely human, but also undeniably awake. And that is the most that we can hope for in this lifetime. The grace to remember who we are while there's still time to enjoy our free, witnessing, grateful selves, the part of ourselves that's unconditionally thankful and full of blessing. No matter how hard the world becomes, we have access to this deep treasure. And as the year comes to an end, I just want to remember that best part of who we are and to remind one another to be brave and to stay awake, to keep waking up, to keep saying no to the forces that would have us give up in despair and say hello and welcome our gracious and our willing spirits. So that's what I wanted to say to you about enlightenment tonight. And Jay, why don't we pull up the prompt and we will do some writing? Here we go. I'd like you now, please, to take 20 minutes to write about whether or not you feel unconditional gratitude for your life. Do you feel unconditional gratitude for your life? Why or why not? Be as specific as you can be, please. We'll take 20 minutes, 10 minutes in. Jay will open up the breakout rooms if you would like to join the group. Otherwise, just keep on writing. 20 minutes.